When it comes to politics, citizens and pundits agree we're living in contentious times. Congress is frozen in place, with two sides unwilling to compromise. Polarizing shouting matches rule today on Capitol Hill and on the airwaves. It may sometimes seem like our representatives have forgotten that they're representing real people. But it will be real people who vote on November 6th. And no matter who's president for the next 4 years, he'll have to find a way to solve our most pressing problems by working with legislators on Capitol Hill. Is that even possible anymore? In our first panel, we'll hear from 5 former members of Congress with over a century of combined service. They may have thought their jobs were tough when they were in office, but in the last several years, a tsunami of campaign contributions from powerful special interests has helped to keep today's members from reaching compromise on virtually any issue.
By the candidates themselves, now we are seeing unprecedented sums by outside groups outside of the control of the campaigns themselves. How is this changing kind of the dynamics on Capitol Hill and the job of being a legislator? Dan, you want to start?
We're always going to have money in politics, so but the amount increases are arithmetical. They just cost me $100,000 to run for Congress in 1976. The rates would cost $5 million today, and probably more because there'd be money pouring in on the side because of the Citizens United case. It does a couple of things that are bad. Number one, the worst thing, it makes people who don't participate in the system less likely to participate in the system because they think it's not on the level, it's corrupt. Second of all, people do not give you money because they like the color of your hair or the way you look. They give you money for the purpose of influencing you. That's been the way since the beginning of time. But with quantum increases of money, there's quantum increases, in my judgment, of influence. Third of all, the amount of time people have to spend to raise money. One member told me he spends 60% of his daily time raising money. So what does that mean? It means he can't listen to the debate. It means he can't participate in what he has to do. So it demeans the job that they're doing. And so I think we have the danger of turning this into one of the most corrupt political systems in the world if we're not careful. That's my belief.
Why don't we just go down the road?
Yeah,
Nikki.
The only system that is really fair, and I don't know quite how we get to it, liberals just think it ought to stop corporations from giving money. No, it ought to stop corporations, it ought to stop labor unions, it ought to stop PACs, it ought to stop political parties. You ought to have a system where only living human beings can give money to a candidate.
My first race for the House of Representatives cost about $350,000. My last race for the Senate cost a little over $24 million. So that's all you need to know about the trend in politics today. And that's happening all over. I know from personal experience and from the experience in all of my colleagues that, just as Dan Glickman said, the last 2 years of a Senate term, at least 60% of it, if not 75%, is spent on the money chase. In a small room about this size, the size of this chair, you're dialing for dollars all over the country, and you're traveling for dollars when you can't dial. I mean, it is just all-consuming, and that is in part the problem we have today. There are only 2 ways to fix it, and both of them virtually impossible. One is to incent through public financing that Jane talked about. The other is to pass a constitutional amendment, and that all this money is not free speech. But we've got to figure out a way to address it because I think our democracy is on the line.
Well, I'm going to make an unpopular suggestion. Buckley Vallejo has been on the books for, what, almost 30 years. Jane just pointed, pardon me?
35.
More than 30, okay. Jane just pointed out Citizens United was reaffirmed, not struck down last week. This is the law of the land, as long as, and as you pointed out, amending the Constitution and going to public financing are virtually impossible, okay? If that is the case, the restrictions that that reformers have put on contributions to political parties and candidates, which are fully disclosed and for which candidates and parties must take account, are ridiculous. It makes no sense from anybody's standpoint to have large, undisclosed, unregulated contributions, but the entities that are regulated are transparent, and for which candidates do have to take responsibility, they can't take larger contributions. I understand from a different point of view. If we could change Citizens United, Buckley Vallejo, and all that, okay, then you got a different system. Given the system we've got, restricting the most open, honest, transparent, and accountable forms of campaign finance makes no sense at all.